So one of the memes that I see pretty frequently online is like, well, in creme posting is what I expected versus what I got, for Way of Kings in particular, right? And people come in with like all these expectations about like Game of Thrones crossed with Lord of the Rings crossed with, I don't know, like the Book of Mormon or something, right? But then what they actually get is just crab people. Like there's a South Park episode back from when I actually watched that. So crab people crossed with survivor's guilt and let's talk about the ethics of murder and I don't know, stress-induced magic powers. But that's a Mr. Levinstein comic for another time that we need to break out a meme.
Yeah, I mean, I can see that happening online.
Yeah.
I mean, I agree. I feel like the cover art is always... has a completely different world to what I think the book is, but yeah.
Well, and it's just such a different, expectations are hard to, I don't know. It's
also, I don't think of crabs.
You don't think of crabs?
I don't think of crabs.
Everything is crabs in this book, though.
Maybe just because I don't visualize things.
Yeah, and I think that honestly
like
might be
people.
more, that might be more self-referential stuff from the fandom, but anyway. Hello and welcome to Cosmere Casual, your casual reader's guide for Brandon Sanderson's Cosmere. I'm your co-host and meme enthusiast, Nick Gorman.
And I'm your co-host, AJ Gorman, and I am not really partaking of the internet.
Yeah. So today is our post-read episode for The Way of Kings, Book 1 in the Stormlight Archive. We've got a couple episodes out there already for both a pre-read, a deep dive into the setting, and just going through the interludes in more detail. But so this is our more holistic looking at The Way of Kings, what we liked about it, some plot recap, looking at the character arcs.
Non-Cosmere.
Right, but we're not going to get into,
That will be the next episode.
Yeah. Well, and I think we have another one planned about what foreshadowing is in here that
too,
pays
yes.
off in later Stormlight books. But those are, this episode will be only spoilers for The Way of Kings, right?
Correct.
If not, then I'll just cut that out. Whatever.
Yeah. Okay.
So I guess just to give a rough outline, we're gonna go through the character arcs on your especially your three main point of view characters.
Shallan, Kaladin, Dalinar.
Yeah, and then we'll sort of take it from there. I know I also want to talk about what we know and especially what we don't know about the magic system at this point. Brando Sando is pretty well known for his magic systems, and there's just but we'll get there. We'll get there after, when we get there. So you want to? Let's talk about Shallan. How did you like Shallan?
I like Shallan.
Huh?
There are definitely points where you just want to scream at her because she's just a very frustrating, naive character at points.
I feel like I didn't care about her plot the first time I read this book.
Well, it's a lot less action-packed.
It's a lot less action-packed. It's, Dalinar and Kaladin are over in, they're like in the same part of the world, and then Shallan's off, somewhere
in
else.
Some peaceful
basically.
little corner.
Yeah, right. Playing Scholar, and it's like, as much as I like sitting and reading, like reading about somebody else sitting and reading is a little bit less.
At the same time, though, like I can actually put myself in Shallan's shoes, and I cannot do that with Kaladin or Dalinar.
Right. Well, and that's like right, and I like her more on rereads, and I like the way that we find out about the world through her perspective, right? Because like we get a lot about hey, what's a Voidbringer, right? And that's well, there are these myths, stuff like that. So I really like that, and we the importance of soul casters and yada yada yada. I thought it gets done pretty organically through there.
Correct. But it's also frustrating to read Shallan's chapters, especially with this book, because there are so many contradictions.
Yeah. But that's got to be for another episode, yeah. Unless is there?
Well,
anything
I mean, we don't have to
explain.
explain the contradictions, but
Okay.
she keeps telling herself, even the very beginning of the book, that she's a naive child, and then the king comes along. Apparently, she has no qualms about talking to the king of Cobranth.
Well, I thought the vibes I got at the beginning were that she was pretty hesitant. That's the king.
Yeah, but
But
I
then
mean,
it was
so that immediate response was, "That's the king," but like
yeah.
we saw no hesitation of her talking directly to the king, which is not what I would.
Yeah, right.
Which doesn't make sense.
Right. And like she was so I mean, I didn't really second guess it because I thought of her as like more in in Yasna's entourage, right? But I guess, it does kind of make sense that yeah, it does seem a little interesting that she's so being comfortable with the king.
Yeah, and then
Taravangian.
Taravangian. We'll talk about him later. And then she keeps saying that she's naive. She's never left her home, but she's not dumb. Like very clearly not dumb. I mean, when Yald pushes her towards a Thalen bookseller, there's a very clear moment where like Shallan's like, well, of course he pushed me towards a Thalen bookseller because he's Thalen. Like, I don't know if I should really, if this is really the best bookseller. But like she thinks things through.
She reads as someone who's book smart, but not street smart, right?
Yeah, but you can be book smart, sitting in your comfortable room and like take a test,
Yeah.
but being out on the street and being able to think on your feet, that's a different skill, and she definitely has that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Also, she gets into arguments with strangers.
Yes. Right. And, and she's got a mouth on her.
Such a mouth.
So did you
Which I like.
Did you think that she was funny?
Of course.
Her bad jokes.
I mean, not those.
Okay.
I mean,
Because I see a lot of mixed opinions on on
I don't
your
like the pun.
subreddits.
I don't like the punny stuff.
See,
I know you freaking love the punny stuff.
it's not that I find it funny. I just like it. Is that
I more like the fact that she talk a mile a minute. I mean, shout out to all my Gilmore Girl fans out there, but
yeah, boy,
she'll talk a mile a minute and just like completely bulldoze her over people with what she's spouting out, and that I like, and a lot of that stuff is like really funny.
So do we want to talk about her arc as you see it within this book, or like I've got a bunch of notes about like, because there's a lot of sudden twists and turns like all right at the end, so I've got stuff about diving into that.
Yeah.
I think you wanted more of a broader view.
Well, I did want to say that there's definitely some stuff in this book that never gets really resolved. There are hints.
Well, it does not that it never gets resolved, it's just that it's
not in this book. So if you noticed a lot of things about talking about swords and 10 heartbeats and all of that stuff, there's more to learn. We'll talk about that in...
There's always another secret.
We'll talk about that soon, but it's hard to talk about now. So it's not that we're ignoring it. It's hard to talk about.
Read and find out, as they say.
Raffo, as Brandon says.
Okay, well, I'm going to dive in then. So I guess like starting with the key moments in her arc, like one of the key things that she sees is when she sees Yasna use the Soulcaster for the first time, right? Where it's getting rid of the boulder that had blocked off, that had caved in and trapped Taravangian's, grandchild. That gets described a few times, and like there's something funny about it that Yasna can't, or that Shallan can't quite articulate. And by the end of the book, you realize that Yasna wasn't using a soulcaster. The one that she never had a real soulcaster. Yasna is the soulcaster, and that sort of plays in with the other revelation that Shallan by herself can soulcast. Right? She doesn't need the fabrial that she took from her father's corpse, basically. Wait, do we know? Yeah, we know that he's dead. Sorry.
Yes, we do.
Okay, sorry. Thought I had a spoiler there. It's like, oh no, wait. So that's, I think, one set of big twists that sort of recontextualizes a lot of her arc. Also, I guess the other big one was that the mythical, legendary, the boogeymen, the Voidbringers, are actually the Parshmen, which are these, semi-sentient slaves that we've seen in the background through the whole book. So the working theory at this point is that the Parshmen slaves suddenly turn on their masters, and that
And that is what the desolation.
Yeah, and that societal upheaval is what's called the desolation from the Vorin, myths of yore, right? So that's the working theory at this point. So I guess just to sort of bring...
Which is a really hard thing for the society to absorb, which is why Yasna is doing so much research, trying to find as much evidence as possible, because it's going to be really hard to convince everybody to give up their parchment. Yeah. Because it's free labor.
Yes. Right? Yeah. So those are, I guess, two key revelations, but I guess another key moment in the arc between Shallan and Yasna is when Yasna kills those murderers on the street, right? Mm-hmm. The robbers
and potentially could have been more.
And after that, like, everything sort of changes for Shallan, because before that she had been so focused on getting into Yasna's good graces,
and she had actually decided that she couldn't steal from Yasna.
Right. Like, so she
did a complete 180 after that night.
Well, I mean, to be fair, it's probably pretty traumatic,
Yes.
Especially like it's presented as like a philosophy lesson, right? So it's like,
it was.
I guess side note, I really like how, philosophy and ethics are handled in the Stormlight Archive. And I think this is a good example of that, where there's actual discussion to be had about, was Yasna wrong? What did Yasna do that was wrong, right? Did she do anything wrong? And if so, what was it? Was it wrong for her to kill the robbers? Was it wrong for her to go out on the street in the way that she did? Was it wrong, what? I would love to go into that. I don't think this is the right time. I don't know when is.
We could have a whole episode devoted to that conversation.
Yeah, I don't know if you're being picked up on your mic now.
Oh. Okay. Well, we could have a whole discussion on that topic.
So, but after she's Yasna kill those robbers, then, and Shallan, decides that was so disgusting. She just can. She can steal the Soulcaster, and so she does. The Soulcaster. But after that happens, she starts being haunted by these symbol-headed things appearing in her drawings, right?
Well, part of that revelation of being able to decide that she can steal the Soulcaster is that she decided in her brain that she admitted to herself that she could steal from Yasna and keep going, working, studying under Yasna. She could lie to her and be okay.
Yeah.
And live with herself, which is, not everybody would be able to do that, and not everybody would be able to admit that to themselves.
Yep. Yes.
So those symbol head creatures.
Yes. Well, I don't want to lean too hard into that. But yeah, so she starts being haunted by these symbol-headed figures who show up in her drawings, and she's trying to run from them, but also she keeps drawing, and she sees the figures approaching in her drawings, and that's when she is transported somewhere and turns the goblet in her room into blood.
That's when she soul casted.
Yeah. And
it's really super confusing that soul cast is the person, the device, the act.
Yes. So she transforms the goblet in her room into blood. And so to try to cover that up, because she's still she hasn't connected the dots yet, that's something she's inherently able to do, and that Yasna is also inherently able to do.
Yeah, she just thinks she did it with the stolen soul caster.
So she fakes a suicide attempt then to try to cover her tracks.
To explain the blood.
And I don't know, because it's so confusing, whenever I try to go back and think about this book, I always forget about the suicide as a cover-up attempt.
I don't know why.
I always do. Like, it is a pivotal scene. Like, I don't know why I keep forgetting it, but I do. This is a scene that I always forget. And so that sort of brings us back to her recovery from that. Yeah, go ahead.
So something to note. So at the end, when Shallan kind of draws pictures of what she saw with the symbol heads in the place that she was transported to, she shows those images to Yasna, and seeing those images is part of what convinces Yasna that Shallan actually is a soulcaster and has been to those places.
Yeah, was actually able to soulcast. Yeah. So, but then while she's recovering from the suicide attempt, wink, she gets wrapped up in Capsule the Ardent assassination attempt on Yasna. No.
So as Yasna explained, the bread that he had been bringing Shallan all this time was very likely poisoned every time, but the antidote was always in the jam.
Mm-hmm.
They always ate it with jam. So Capsule was never trying to harm Shallan.
Yeah. Maybe.
At least not directly.
Yeah. Yeah. He was definitely trying to use Shallan
Oh, yeah.
to get, and whether that counts as harm or not, I don't, it doesn't feel nice. I bet she wouldn't like it.
Right. So just to explain further, Yasna did eat the bread, but she had soul casted the bread before she put it into her mouth, which is why
Right.
she was never poisoned when Shallan kind of forced her to eat the bread that Capsule brought.
Yes.
But Shallan ate the bread,
Yep.
and so did Capsule, and Yasna unknowingly transformed the antidote.
Yeah. And so then, in order to save Shallan, she kind of sort of transforms.
Soul casts her blood
Yeah, she
to purify it.
yeah. She soul casts Shallan's blood into blood, basically,
But
right?
pure blood.
Yeah. But it's still
I think this kind of
hard
ignores
process.
the fact that there's different kinds of blood, but anyways.
I think they talked about that though, right? I thought she mentioned that it was like a one-liner thing. I didn't.
Well, she talked about the difference between organics and blood, because blood is one of the 10 essences.
Yeah.
I have no idea what that means with the 10 essences.
Yeah.
You don't really need to understand that.
No, it's not really critical to like getting what's going on in the book, but it is. I mean, this is one of those things that if you want to dig more into what that is, like the Ars Arcanum at the very end of the book, after the epilogue and everything, it's dry, but it's a very that's the point, is that it's a reference material written in world.
I've read all 5 books and not super understanding of that, and I've been just fine.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe it will be important later, but as yet.
Yeah. So I think the other thing that's sort of
Well, hold on. I want to go back to Capsule, because one
Oh.
of the things that I always kind of rag on Brandon for not being like a good romantic writer. But there's one thing that happened in this book that I actually really loved and would love to see more of from authors. Shallan thinks at one moment, Stormfather, he really seemed to be in love with her. Shouldn't she be falling in love with him too?
oh yeah.
She didn't think she was. She was just confused. I'm like, why don't we see more of this? Just because you like hanging out with someone doesn't mean that you love them. And, and love is not always reciprocated. I mean, in our personal lives, I'm sure it happens like way more often than we would want it to happen. So I don't know why we don't see more stories like this, like people who like each other but don't love each other, but trying to figure that out. So I do appreciate that, this non-love but potential love arc.
I don't want to include spoilers for future books, but yeah, that's a really interesting thing that I wonder if anyone might read and find out about. There's more of that in the series.
That's true. There is some more.
I guess going back to Yasna and Shallan as soul casters, it's after, while Shallan is dying from the poison, she confesses to Yasna that she had stolen the soul caster and that her, she needs, that, you won't be able to soul cast my blood, because at that point Shallan doesn't know. And so it's, if you were confused, going back to say, well, why did Shallan need to confess that she stole the soul caster to Yasna? It's because she didn't know.
She thought it was that what was needed to save her life.
Right. And it ultimately wasn't needed, right? But and that sort of comes back again when Shallan confronts Yasna about being a soul caster, and how Shallan ultimately calls Yasna's bluff is that she talks to the symbol-headed creatures, and they say that they really need a truth to grant powers, and that will get explored later. And what it means here is vague, and that's really it's supposed to be vague.
But again, as I pointed out,
Yeah.
Shallan admitted to herself pretty much immediately before soul casting that she could remain here, accepting Yasna's freely giving tutelage after what she'd done.
Yeah. Well, and I think, but the second time she soul casts,
two paragraphs later, she's seeing the cryptics.
Yeah. And then
Those symbol-headed
creatures
are called cryptics.
No, I'm gonna edit that out too. But there's the truth that she says before she soulcasts the second time is that she had killed her father, right?
That's true. Yeah.
And so that that those are important. Keep that in mind, I guess. there's a lot more to explore about those things. Both like, hey, what do you mean she killed her dad? But there's more books to explore that. That's all I had to say about Shallan.
Okay.
You got? Do you have more? But
Yes, thank you. Appreciate the space. There's things in popular culture about creating space. Anyways, I'm not completely off the internet. Make space. Anyways. So Yasna. Yasna, which to spell Yasna, it starts with a J. I like Yasna.
So does Shallan.
I want to know.
Sorry.
Keep your internet
Maybe that would have been a better meme.
off of...
Maybe that would have been a better meme to open with. Yeah, no, but anyway, whatever. Next episode.
I really like her. I really hope that she is one of the kind of anchor characters for the next arc, because there's so much more to learn about her. Right after she kills those men, Shallan, there's a comment made, and Shallan thinks to herself, oh my God, what has been done to this woman? Because something most definitely has been done to traumatize this woman. What are you...
I have things, but this is the wrong episode to talk about that.
Okay.
I'm bursting at the seams, and I'm trying not to have spoilers.
I'm keeping it within the parameters of the way it just...
You are.
But, I mean, she starts off as this very scary, like, oh, this is some heretic, some horrible creature,
heretic
with a human with no heart or whatever. And she does kind of start off pretty scary and very stern and kind of unfeeling. But we definitely see her more human side, as she interacts with Shallan. I do want to point out that she did ask Shallan to return to apologize, even though she hadn't seen the kind of appeal letter or the apology letter. I always forget that sometimes at the beginning.
At the beginning. Okay, so the apology for dismissing Yasna out of hand. Or no?
Well, dismissing Shallan.
Oh, yeah. Excuse me. I don't know why I'm switching their names around. Everybody's Yasna, which is not... Anyway.
And then we also see kind of Yasna being forced and accepting that she's going to take Shallan on as a ward even after the events of the entire book.
Yeah. Which, yeah.
But yeah, I'm looking forward to more Yasna in Arc 2.
Okay.
There's more to come of Yasna in Arc 1, but I want more.
Okay.
I think that wraps up Shallan.
Okay. Segueing into Dalinar. Because, I know this is Kaladin's book, but we have the most to say about him, so he's going to go last. At least I have the most to say about him.
I think it's important to understand that we are meeting Dalinar in a time of kind of mid to post transition. The Dalinar that we know is not the Dalinar that all of the characters remember.
He's Dalinar, not the Blackthorn.
Yes, we don't really know the Blackthorn. We know Dalinar in his kind of new era. And it's really hard to remember that, even on, particularly on rereads and everything.
Well,
because you have to understand the difference between old Dalinar and the Dalinar that we're meeting for the first time in this book is very stark.
Yes. Yeah, I'm just... Because when we first see Dalinar in this book, he's at a very low point in his career.
Are we talking about the prologue?
No. When we first, really meet... When Dalinar shows up first as a character.
Oh, okay, all right.
Right?
As a point of view character.
Point of view character. He gets a cameo in the prologue, right?
He does, yeah. He's drunk on his ass. On the prologue.
Yeah. But when we meet him here, he's at a low point. Maybe not the lowest point, we don't know. But he's definitely at a low point where he was once respected by his peers as the Blackthorn, and now they openly mock him, right? He has all this responsibility for...
I don't think he thinks he's at a low point, but...
He's thinking about abdicating the throne.
Well, halfway through the book, but not when we first meet him.
He's well on the way to that, right?
I suppose.
People are openly or secretly and then later openly doubting his sanity, right? He's taken on all these responsibilities that, should be split amongst the high princes, but, for whatever reason it falls onto him.
Well, he's taken it up.
He's taken it up, right? He's the only one who won't sacrifice lives, in the meat grinder of the bridge runs, right? Yeah. He still takes risks, right? But they're different risks. He takes risks with his and his son's lives, and I think that is a stark contrast to all of the other high princes and all the way the other armies run.
I do see that kind of, not showing us the Blackthorn side or giving that history makes it easier for first-time readers of the book to kind of catch on, because you're not distracted, by his history, and it's easier to kind of catch on to the plot.
Yeah, and I mean, he gets a character arc. He gets a character arc, right? But it's just we're not really in the middle of it.
Yeah.
Or like he has a different arc in this book than he does overall.
Right. Like this is just a mini arc. Yeah.
Yeah. But I like how things are kind of starting to turn for him, right? By the end. Like he's struck out with all the other high princes, right? Trying to try these innovative new tactics, teaming up with high princes. But then he teams up with Sadeas, and they still kick a lot of ass while being more or less ethical about it.
Yeah, I mean, through most of the book, everybody's kind of, saying that, Dalinar's time is through. He's not really a player anymore.
He appears to go into epileptic fits anytime, or maybe he's just so scared during high storms.
But then Dalinar's revelation after Sadeas' betrayal is, you know what you showed me, Sadeas? You showed me that I'm still a threat.
Right. Well, and there's a
Which
lot
is true, that Sadeas treated him as a threat.
Right?
Because he definitely is a threat.
Yeah. Well, and there's a lot of sudden reversals, right? He, before that last, plateau run that, ends in betrayal, Navani sister-in-law Navani / potential lover Navani realizes that he's not speaking gibberish when he falls into these visions. He's speaking an ancient dead language called the Dawn Chant, which I also, side note, I really like that revelation. I like the way it plays out, where he reads he speaks a sentence that Navani recognizes, even though she doesn't know the meaning of it.
Mm-hmm.
And, basically she puts two and two together what that sentence is, where she knows that from, and she gets Dalinar to tell, what he thought he was saying. And, like, there's a real-life analog to that, right? Like, that's what the Rosetta Stone was, where there was, I forget which code of laws it was, but there was a code of laws that was repeated in 3 languages, and that was how modern-day linguists were able to first understand Egyptian hieroglyphs, right? So, like, I really like that. I forget what it was.
Yeah, and the reason why Navani was kind of paying attention to Dalinar,
besides being hot for Daddy Dalinar.
And, they have this long history. So, back up. So, history between those two. Before Gavilar had kind of conquered the kingdom.
Does that get explored in this book?
No, but it does. They explain that Navani kind of had the option of marrying Dalinar or Gavilar.
They're both courting her.
They were both courting her at the same time. And ultimately, Navani chose Gavilar.
Yep.
And she admits that, Dalinar, I liked you. I actually liked you more than Gavilar, but you scared me.
Well,
because of his ferocity. And we don't really know what she's talking about, because we don't really have a good understanding of Dalinar's Blackthorn kind of thing at this point. We see glimpses, but we don't really understand.
There's hints, right?
But anyway, but at this point, again, Dalinar's this mid to post transition. He's a different person. And Navani comments, this last year in particular, you've been the person the others all claim that they are, being an honorable person.
Yeah. Yeah. So
and Gavilar's dead, so who cares?
Yeah. Well,
besides Dalinar.
Yeah.
And the church.
Yeah. Well, that doesn't come up. I'm definitely cutting that out. I don't know. I don't think it's that subtle, but I think it's still worth mentioning that for all of the plateau assaults except for the last one, there was a mix of, when they did those joint plateau runs, there was always a mix of the fast-moving Sadeas bridge crews and the slow-moving, Chul-driven Dalinar's bridge crews. And it's only for this last one where Sadeas executes that great betrayal that, because it was such a big, plateau that is so far away, where they've made attempts before, Sadeas is able to convince Dalinar to leave his slow ones behind.
I disagree with you there. there's a conversation that kind of like, yes, that's where the conversation started, but Dalinar was still going to say no. It was only after Sadeas said, I've got a new way of using the bridge crews that are a much lower casualty rate. So I was going to ask you, do you think that the betrayal still would have happened if Kaladin hadn't kind of provided that new innovation of wearing the Parshendi armor?
Yeah, the details of it might have been different. But yes, I do believe so.
Okay.
I'm not sure how it would have happened, but you know,
and maybe it wouldn't have been a betrayal on the battlefield, but
yeah. I mean, I don't want to get into
that, or they probably would have had to like sabotage the bridges in some way. But
I mean, because there's still it would have happened, and I'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
I firmly believe that Sadeas really did want Dalinar out of the picture.
But I mean, Kaladin had a significant kind of role in letting in. I think it was a significant role in kind of in letting this happen. Not intentionally, of course. But
I think there's room for disagreement on that.
Okay. Really? Okay.
Yeah. Maybe I'm just contrarian today. I don't know. Anyway, but that's what sort of lets them get. That's sort of a key thing that results in Dalinar getting stranded, along with Adolin, along with their whole army, right? But then Kaladin rescues them, and it's more complicated than that. We'll get to Kaladin's perspective on it, later. But as basically thanks for that, Dalinar promises to free Bridge 4, the bridge crew that stayed behind to save them. And it's I don't know. I have mixed feelings about the scene where they, Sadeas and Dalinar go back and forth about, give me these bridge crews. Well, no, I don't.
I can't part with them.
Yeah, I can't part with them. I wouldn't. I'll give you, however many emerald drums. A huge sum of money per head. I wouldn't do it for 1,000 times that. Well, here, have my shard blade, my priceless shard blade.
Which is what Sadeas has been wanting.
Yes, he's been coveting. Like I think I like that scene. It's the explanation to Kaladin afterwards that I'm just like,
it is hard to swallow.
Yeah, I mean, and I get the point though, is that it's Dalinar is strictly he firmly adheres to his word. He gave his word. He was gonna do it, no matter what it took, right?
Yeah, I mean, so you can read it as definitely like he was keeping his promise to Kaladin, but I think Dalinar needed to do it on a personal level as well.
To do what? To
give up his shard blade, to really kind of fully transition from, I'm gonna rise above these what are they called? The
high princes.
The high princes.
Well, he's no longer
I'm gonna stop
be...
playing games. I'm gonna give up my shard blade and I'm gonna go full politician.
Yeah. Okay.
So I think Dalinar needed to do that as much for him as for Kaladin.
Interesting. Well, and I'm sure that the sudden bouts of nausea he had been having on the battlefield, disgust at himself and what he was doing. I'm sure that also played part of it too, right?
Yes.
Interesting. Yeah, I don't know. I didn't like the comparison of I got quite a bargain. I thought it was a little too ham-fisted. That's just my.
I liked it.
Good.
I do want to point out that, again, going back to this time of transition, Dalinar is not okay. I mean, especially in the beginning of the book, there are some things that really kind of hit me. Like, the fact that Dalinar, thinks to himself of the fact that he thinks only of Elhokar and, barely gives a passing thought to his sons being in danger.
Evelyn, and whatever that, the other one, Ronaldo?
Renarin.
Sorry. Invalid.
Yeah, so, he's still, he's still 7 years in the past, mourning and feeling and all this guilt about his brother's death. He's not in a great mental state.
There's
definitely some truth to
they're deeply flawed characters, right?
Oh yeah, so deeply flawed.
And are we not going to mention that he doesn't know his first wife's name?
That was next on my list, actually.
Oh, okay. It's because it would be totally on brand if we didn't talk about it.
Okay, so quick recap. In one of the interlude chapters, there is a reference to a force creature,
the Night
whatever.
Watcher.
It's a reference to the Night Watcher.
One of the old magic.
Yes, they call it the old magic. So the deal is you go to the Night Watcher, you ask for a boon. She'll give you the boon that she thinks you deserve and a curse to go along with it.
That might or might not be related.
I'm sure that there's some Greek mythology that is very akin to this.
I mean, it's a very Arabic thing, the jinn.
Oh, that too.
Yeah, I was about to say, like, a genie, right?
Yeah. So Dalinar visited the Night Watcher. That's a fact that we know at this point. We also know that he can't remember his wife's name, and it is because of the Night Watcher.
Yep.
We do not know.
He won't. He refuses. He pointedly refuses to say what his boon and his curse were,
Or to even think about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we don't know if forgetting his wife's name is the curse or the boon
or both.
or both. We have no idea.
Definitely presented as being both. So
Yeah.
I have a few flippant things to say, sort of at the very end of his character arc within this book. Can I do my bad jokes? So he spends they're very bad. I know this. Readers, listeners, I know that my jokes are bad. I get it. So Dalinar spends most of the book, if you were going to pick a philosopher that he most embodies, it's going to be Kant, because he gives his word. His word is ironclad. He will do what he has said. But then sort of at the end of the book, he has another vision, and it's, a vision from the Almighty, from God. And, basically the conclusion is that God is dead. And that's Nietzsche, babe. That's Nietzsche, baby. He's nihilist now. Nothing matters. And in true Nietzschean fashion, after he has that realization, he wakes up from his vision, goes and kicks the king's ass, tells him that he's fucking his mom, and then leaves. Cool.
I do really appreciate how Brandon kind of is able to shove all of these really awesome moments right at the very end of a book.
And yeah, I mean, I don't know jack diddly squat about philosophy other than, but I also like if you're wanting to get into it, like this is how I
Some college courses could probably use these books as coursework.
I wouldn't go that far, but like it could be.
It's kind of long.
Yeah.
But there's definitely stuff to delve into.
Yeah. You ready to move on to Kaladin? Do you have other stuff to say about Dalinar?
I want to spend a little bit of time with the visions.
Okay.
I want to point out some things.
Okay. Now, before we do that, oh God, no spoilers for other books. No crossovers with other books.
I thought out my notes.
Okay.
So one thing that's easy to forget is that in kind of the present day that we're reading about, there are spren all over the place.
Yeah.
In the visions, there are a few points where they kind of mention that Dalinar can't see any spren.
Yep.
I'm just going to leave that there. Ponder that as you
think on that. Yeah.
As you keep reading more books. There's one vision where Dalinar keeps thinking over and over again, where did their helm go? I thought it was a great point of just humor in a very dark vision. I was just laughing out loud. I was like, this is the third time he's thought, where did their helm go?
Okay, A, I didn't notice that. But B, where I do notice that same exact thought is the fucking Marvel movies, where once they introduce like nanobots or whatever the heck they're called, suddenly everybody's helms are disappearing and reappearing, and it's just like, oh, okay. I know it's just because CGI. Anyway, whatever.
Well, also we want to see the handsome faces.
Yes.
We want to see some metal, smooth thing. I'm like,
that's
not handsome to look at. I want to see the wind-tossed hair.
You want to see Robert Downey Jr. You don't want to see.
No, I want to see all the Chris's.
Oh yeah, all the Chris's.
There you go. There's in one of the visions that they talk about midnight essence.
No. That is definitely for the Cosmere. Like, okay. No.
All right. I still don't understand how the thrill is affecting him in the vision.
What do you mean? I didn't
take
any special notes about it.
Yeah, he feels the thrill in the visions.
Okay. I really can't discuss that.
That's fine.
I'm like, I really can't.
We should also kind of just make sure we get down that the visions, the Way of Kings book that Dalinar likes, and the codes are three distinct entities.
Okay. Maybe, yeah, okay, yeah.
They are...
The Way of Kings is a book that Dalinar...
Written by Noadon.
Yep. That Noadon has read to him. He's illiterate.
Well, that Dalinar has read to him,
right. The visions are the fits that he goes into during the high storms, and the Alethi codes of war, like a code of conduct.
Yeah, but one of the last visions we see, the Almighty does ask Dalinar says to him, read the book. And the book that he's referencing is The Way of Kings.
Okay.
Because The Way of Kings is the kind of the guidebook that the Knights Radiance used. So that's how the visions in the book are related. And then the codes were actually a product. Were the codes a product of the book as well?
I'm not going into that. Let's say I don't know.
I believe the codes were a product of the book. So they're normally just referred to as the codes, but they're Alethi codes of war. And the Alethi codes of war are kind of pushing people to act honorably, be good leaders, which is also what the Way of Kings book is about. So they are kind of interrelated, but they are distinct things. Can we talk about Adolin?
I love talking about Adolin. Yeah, let's talk about Adolin. Adolin's like my favorite character in the series.
He's pretty good. I mean,
he's a golden retriever of a character. He's so good.
He is, especially with his hair.
Such a himbo.
He is. I mean, he is. He goes through a lot of women.
Yeah.
He never really... He likes the attention, but he never ever like actually likes
You just want attention. You don't want my heart. Anyway, yeah. Charlie Puth or whatever that.
Yeah, he never... I think he always he tends to think of them more as objects than actual people.
Well, and he likes the status. I don't think he wants to be with anybody. He just doesn't want to be alone.
Correct.
Yeah.
So, which is too bad, because he has a lot of stress in his life, and he could use someone, but I mean, he has his brother to talk to about...
Renarin?
So, but yeah, I love Adolin. Two things. I mean, he gives up easily, too, because like, as soon as something minor goes wrong, he'll just gives up and goes to the next woman.
With regards to romance. Yeah, well, that's just, like I said, that's just because he's not committed. I was about to say, I mean, like, because we see a fair bit of stubbornness and tenacity from him, and especially in regards to dealing with his father.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And also, he's not a complete himbo. He does have a brain. He doesn't always use it.
I was about to say, I'm like, what?
He does have a brain, and when he chooses to use it, there's something to use.
Yeah. So he's not entirely, Grok from Emperor's New Groove. But, like, he's pretty good. He's pretty up.
One of my favorite things about Adolin was that he actually says, "I told you so" to his father in the middle of fighting for his life.
I mean, yeah. There's a flurry of emotions as well as a flurry of blows. Yeah. Yeah.
He's a very relatable character.
Yeah, like I said, I like him. He's my favorite, I think, in the Stormlight Archive. I mean, there's a lot of good characters, but...
I particularly like the way that he interacts with Kaladin.
We don't really see that very much in this book, so I don't want to go into it.
We do see it a couple times. So
literally twice.
And those were great moments. I mean, the gall of... I mean, I think it's gall.
This bridge boy, a slave.
Kaladin actually admires this Light Eyes. The first time in a long time that he's kind of admired the Light Eyes or thinks that the Light Eyes did something well. Saving this what do they call them? Courtesan. This courtesan from, kind of being beat up. Saves her and then gives Kaladin a buttload of money.
Yep.
To run a message.
But it ain't what you do, it's the way that you do it. And the way that Adolin does it flippant.
It is very flippant.
Me, I like it. But I come from a place of privilege where I like that kind of moxie, right?
Yeah.
Don't have it, but, yeah. So, like, I mean, I get it. And, like, yeah. I get it.
I just like that they're, It's a great first meeting.
Yeah, and then second meeting is, the situation's very much, Kaladin really lets him know what he really thinks.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
get your men across the bridge. I will save your father. Get going.
Yeah.
You're being dumb.
Yeah. And
Kaladin is just so in charge of this relationship.
Well, certainly in that moment, like, he's the only one who's focused on getting there, he's almost got like tunnel vision for getting them out of there, right? And it's interesting because one of the things that keeps coming up in this book is, honor and how it is displayed and things like that. And Kaladin has a very honorable moment where he sacrifices his own, interests to turn around and go back for the Kolins. But, he also, knows when to turn it off and, no, it's time to retreat. You don't keep fighting to your last breath. That's not the right thing to do here, right? And so it's deceptively subtle, I think. I thoughts that I can't really articulate right now. Maybe next time we record, about the way that honor is represented in these books, in this world. Because I was trying to keep that in the back of my mind as I was reading through this time, because it does come up throughout the whole series. But like starting with here, like it is a very honor-based society, and I didn't really give that full consideration, but I should have. And like there's a strict caste system, right? They don't call it that. It's their nons and dons and things like that. And there are strict rules, and there's strict, there's a very high importance on saving face, especially if you're high up in the caste system, right? And I didn't really appreciate that as a thing that society values, right? So anyway, that's my tangent on that. Ready to talk about Kaladin? I've already kind of started a little bit, huh?
Yeah.
Okay. He tries so hard to save everybody, and he's so sad. Because they all keep dying.
So it's confusing to understand your first read, because we see Kaladin, we get introduced to Kaladin. Like the first 3 chapters are like 3 different points in the timeline.
Yeah. We see him as the wretch. We see him as, the soldier. Then yeah.
And it's all out of order.
We see him as a kid. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, there's at least 4 different time points. But yeah, when we first see him, he's an officer in a very petty border war, and he just saves young boys.
War's maybe a strong word, right? Because they don't consider it
skirmishes.
Like, right. I don't think we have a real world analog, right? Or unless we just say that like they're just constantly in a state of civil war and like okay with that. Like I think that's the only way to really think about it.
Yeah.
Right? Again,
we live in privileged United States, so
yeah. I mean, I don't know.
It's very hard, I think, for us to understand. I think people in other parts of the world, it would be easier to swallow. But just as a kind of a quick timeline thing, Kaladin grew up in a small town, kind of trying to decide whether or not he wanted to be a soldier or a surgeon. He ends up going, signing up to be in the army because his brother was conscripted into the army. He went with his brother to the army, but they were kind of separated. His brother was kind of just used as arrow fodder, and Kaladin kind of witnessed him dying.
Watched him die.
Very traumatic. And then he continues on being a soldier in that war. So that's when we see in that first chapter, Kaladin is a soldier who's trying to save young boys. And then this is the point where he sees a shard bearer come on the scene, and he and his men win the shard blade, and then he becomes a slave.
Right. And I think it's in this book that we discover like he is just about to re-enlist, right? Because he can't bear to go home. He feels so guilty about letting Tien die.
Yep.
And the reason why he wants to look out for all these poorly trained new recruits who remind him of Tien is because they remind him of Tien.
Yeah.
And his guilt over that. And
so he's trying to save others where he couldn't save his brother.
Yep. And yeah, like you said, he kills a shard bearer. It's stuff legends are made out of.
Yeah. And then Amaram decides he wants to take... There was no one around. There was like no one to witness this. So no one knew.
There were no survivors.
Yeah, they were like the 5 surviving members of Kaladin's crew, and of course Amaram and his men killed those witnesses, left Kaladin alive for the small spot of honor that Amaran had, saying, you spared my life, so I'll keep you alive, but
I'll spare yours.
But I'm going to make your life completely miserable. I'm going to brand you as a slave and sell you. And yeah, I don't know if it probably would have been kinder to kill him, but anyways, then we wouldn't have a book. So
yeah, well, and I going back to my point about honor. So what Kaladin was doing and this is something that I didn't get in my first several read-throughs of this book. What Kaladin was doing in rejecting the shard blade was unheard of, right? And also a big I'm trying to find the words to describe it. It doesn't fit within the society that they live in. And I think from that perspective, it's like I almost wonder if Amaram saw himself as being honorable in his betrayal of Kaladin.
I think he did see himself as honorable. Because, I think he said it outright. He's like, I know how to use the shard blade. Like, I can actually do something with it. I'm somewhat important. So, by taking the shard blade,
Yeah. And then cleaning up the loose ends so that way I can save my face.
I can do more with it. I can help more people than you could.
Yeah. Like, and I don't agree with it, but like it's such a different viewpoint that they all have, right? I have a hard time following why Amaram could view himself as the good guy, but I am starting to understand that he still does view himself as the good guy.
Well, I mean, and this is kind of where that philosophy comes in, because it's like in why Yasuna was having Shallan study this, because like you should consider these things before you have applications.
Yeah.
Because you want to be set in your morals, because, you know, I don't think that I've kind of got a good foundation of what my morals are, and I really just kind of apply them as a situation comes up, and it's like you don't always see the situation clearly, and so because I just kind of like it doesn't feel good, but it's also written in a way that's not supposed to make us feel good because we're seeing it from Kaladin's perspective. But you know, what if we were to have read this account from Amaran's perspective? Would we still feel bad? Maybe.
Yes.
Would we feel as bad? Probably not.
Yeah. Anyway, we could spend forever today talking about that, so instead we're going to move on, I think.
So Kaladin does get to the Shattered Plains eventually. He actually wanted to get there in the first place. And he has a really hard time absorbing the fact that the war is really just a game to the High Princes.
Right. Because he had this idealized version where it's going to be this honorable battlefield where men fought like men, right? And the demons on the other side were inhuman monsters.
He actually thinks that the Parshendi are more honorable.
Yeah, and that's more on that,
More on that later. But
yeah, but this is where we see Kaladin at his lowest low for this book.
Well, I mean, he tries to kill himself.
Yeah. Well, I think he maybe tries. He's in the active planning. He's very seriously depressed, right? But then Syl, knowingly or not, helps him out of that, right? He gets a magical therapist to talk to.
Yeah, hold on. I had a thought that I wanted to connect the dots. So he keeps falling into this trap because as a kid, he like idealized Light Eyes.
Yeah.
And then was very brutally corrected of that image.
With Roshone.
And
then again with Amaram.
Yeah. But he falls into that trap again, thinking about the war as being a more glorious war.
Yeah.
And then he gets swiftly corrected of that once he arrives there. So it's hard to remember that he's still young. He's still kind of a teenager. He's
19, I believe.
He's still kind of naive and easily falls into these traps.
Right. Well, but it's also interesting because by the time he's so depressed and he's so jaded, so then when he hears about this Dalinar character who's the only honorable High Prince, he's like, yeah, I've fallen for that one before. But this Dalinar's a real deal, right?
Right. So it's like, part of it is growing so that you can, you have these base assumptions, but are you open enough to kind of see, are you willing to admit that you're wrong and willing to, not just assume things and to actually take in all of the information?
Yeah.
Be skeptical, but not.
Yeah.
Something.
Yeah. But I mean that and that's basically that's one of the lessons he has to learn. So there's a lot I think that goes on in terms of developing Bridge 4's characters, but like I don't know, there's not a whole lot of really key moments aside from like Rock Stew and just like.
So I actually posted this to Reddit a few months ago. I'm just like, I can't keep track of all of the Bridge members. And Reddit was just like, yeah, you don't need to. There's like 4 that you need to know, and it sounds like you remember the 4.
Well, yeah. Anyway, I have more thoughts on that for the next episode.
Yeah, I know. We have to leave it there.
But there's like a few key things. Like there's when Kaladin is strung out and left in the high storm for trying something new with the bridge runs, right? For shaking things up. Mm-hmm. That's when Teft realizes that Kaladin is on his way to becoming a Knight Radiant, right? A Knight Radiant.
Yeah, because Teft was part of this kind of secret cult as a child. His parents were part of an organization that was kind of trying to bring about the Knights Radiance. It was very traumatic because all of the adults kept kind of killing themselves in very
they didn't exactly
gruesome ways to try to get these latent powers to come out of them.
Right, but it's also interesting in that they kind of had, it's ironic, I think, in a way, not in a funny kind of way, but like, yeah, it's because Kaladin was sentenced to death that Teft recognized that he was a budding Radiant.
Because he saw him absorb
yeah, because he
evidence of absorbing Stormlight. Yeah.
Right. And so then it's his, Taft starts giving Kaladin more opportunities to draw in Stormlight, even though Kaladin doesn't know what he's doing. And I like how bad is at trying to get information out of Kaladin. Hey, you've been feeling
anything different?
You're feeling any light-headed lately? Like, what?
He is very funny for a very stoic character.
Right. And it's like he's trying to, like, because, obviously the topic is painful for him, right?
Right.
But he wants to know more. And it was cute. Is that the word I'm looking for? It was fun. It was funny.
Yes.
To me. Anywho, I think another key moment is when Kaladin realizes that the Parshendi revere their dead. And so that's what causes him to make that skeletal armor.
Notices and observes things, unlike apparently all of the armies.
Yes. Well, and that I think goes back to it, right? Where he was taking it serious and everybody else was either treating it like a game or had already been sentenced to death.
Get rich quick scheme.
Yeah. Right? And he was the only one who was really... He's not the only one, but he's one of very few people taking it seriously. Right? And, Dalinar being another one who's got his own problems that he,
And in some ways, Kaladin has a lot more freedom. He has access to the Parshendi bodies. He has access to, it's not like some light-eyed woman who's researching is going to go take all of this armor off and go put themselves in the position that Kaladin's men were in.
Right. So, but, he starts making himself a more attractive target, but then he also makes more armor for, all of Bridge 4, except for Shen. And that's basically because the Light Eyes start to recognize that he's a rabble rouser, and all of Bridge 4 is setting a bad example, and they're shaking up the status quo, and so the ones at least in charge of the bridge crews start doing what they can to whittle down Bridge 4. So their time is running out, regardless of what had gone on at the battle.
Yeah, even though
they weren't going to last long. Right.
Yeah. Even though Kaladin was kind of improving their chances, Kaladin was on borrowed time. They wanted to get rid of Kaladin. Yeah.
The survival rate for bridge crews was never very big, and he was improving their chances, but then there are other forces working against him to try to drive them down more, whether doing more frequent bridge runs or always being on every bridge run, or so it's like they were all going to die. Right.
Or Kaladin was going to get assassinated, but yeah.
Yeah. Right, but...
Speaking of that, it always hits me, it always kind of irks me rereading this. To us as the readers, it's very obvious that the bridge crews are just fodder. They're there meant to be killed. But the whole book, Kaladin doesn't see it.
Well, it's
at times, it almost seems like Kaladin does think it through that way. But it's like he doesn't accept it. It never really makes it into his brain.
Right. It's such a hateful thought. I totally understand having, trying to figure out what's going on, having everything right in front of you and not being able to connect the dots because it's so hateful, right?
Yeah, there's the revelation that Kaladin has, I never really feel that revelation because, it was always so obvious.
I feel it every time.
I never.
Even though it's obvious.
Okay, yeah. It doesn't hit me the same.
Can I take a sidebar?
Yeah.
What the fuck kind of racist-ass name is Shen anyway? The one Parshendi guy in Bridge 4... They don't know his name, so they just start calling him Shen. Parshendi.
I mean, injustice is and stupid stuff like that happens all the time.
Well, right, and...
most Asians who come over here, we give them American names, which is not great.
Well, right, but...
I know, it's not the same. It's not the same as assigning a Parshendi the name Shen.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree that it's a whole new low.
Well, and then also there's only, they constantly make points about Zeth, Sun Naturo, Truthless of Shinovar. They're always commenting on how round his eyes are. Everybody else has the epicanthal folds, we would recognize as East Asian type of thing. And so he's the only one that we would look at and think, oh, that's kind of a white guy. And he's also naturally pale. And he always wears white. Anyway, moving on. Bad jokes, racist jokes aside.
But that's not because of his culture. It's because of Parshendi culture.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just want to point that out.
So anyway, it's when Kaladin is trying to make armor for all of Bridge 4 that the betrayal at the tower happens, right? So it's just sort of happenstance that they were all already armored up, basically, right? Mm-hmm. But that also helps give them a fighting chance to fight to have a chance to save the Colins, right?
Not everything of trying to get everything to happen at the end at the same time is going to be as smooth.
Right. Well, and but I did like, that was a really good scene for me. I really liked how it played out because Kaladin, up until that very moment, had been so focused on keeping his men alive, right? And they sandbag a little bit as Sadeas' armies retreat, and basically they're realizing that, hey, this is their chance. They can just keep going east, baby. They've got everything they need. They've got their bridge even. And the officer sits there and he thinks, these stupid bridgemen, they're so tired, they want to laze behind. Well, they'll just get overtaken and killed by the Parshendi. But
which is what they want. The bridge leaders want them dead anyway, so that's great.
So like everybody thinks
everybody
they're pulling
wins.
a fast. Everyone thinks they're pulling a fast one on someone else, right? But it isn't until Sadeas' army has like basically fully retreated, and Kaladin is trying to, tell the Bridge 4 that like, yeah, we're free. That's when they start, really feeling the pain of Sadeas' betrayal and how sad it is for the Colins, and that's and Syl.
Because they're their own men at that point, and who are they if they're going to watch this injustice take place?
Well, right, and then that's when sort of
they have the ability, so now they have the responsibility.
Right, and that all sort of comes together. That Syl.
You're not going to comment on the Spider-Man thing?
No, I'm not. Okay. I mean, it was pretty good though.
All right, thanks.
Syl has the realization that she's not a windspren like they've thought. She's an honor spren, and
we don't really understand what that means.
We don't understand that distinction yet, but Kaladin, swears to protect people who need help, right? Who can't protect themselves, and similar to how Shallan got a burst of power to do something supernatural when she spoke the truth to whatever those strange symbol-headed creatures were. He gets flooded with stormlight when he, swears to protect the people who can't protect themselves, right? And that, he uses that stormlight to slaughter Parshendi. Yeah, it's to slaughter Parshendi.
By the way, the phrase that the Parshendi keep shouting at Kaladin, in their language, they keep saying Night Radiant.
Yeah.
Well, because very, very clearly in the book, they know what he is because they stopped bringing him Stormlight. Sort
of a tangent. I got very. Oh yeah. And they did know that he was. They did notice that, and so they stopped bringing him. More Stormlight.
Yes.
I got Dune vibes from that. I got the same vibe as like the Fremen calling Paul Atreides Muad'Dib, right?
I'm not as familiar with Dune. I think I tried reading the first book, and then I've watched the movies, but that's not the same.
All right, fair enough. So there was something that I thought was, in this read, I thought it was subtle as a sledgehammer, but I also maybe kind of missed it in previous read-throughs, so I just wanted to put a real pin in it in case you are as reading comprehension challenged as I am. Kaladin was a slave. He repeatedly tried running away, and everybody who tried to run away with him was executed as a result, and eventually he got branded,
was killed in the process.
And he eventually got branded with a shash glyph, which is just he was even lower among slaves. He was marked as dangerous to be around, right? But then when he and all of Bridge 4, who are the lowest of the low, decide not to run and instead risk their lives to save someone who's their liege lord's rival, they were instead rewarded with freedom, right? So it's Kaladin's fortunes turn when he stops trying to run away and when he starts trying to solve other people's problems. Earlier on in the book, it's when he stops feeling sorry for himself and starts trying to help Bridge 4 become a cohesive unit. And then, most pointedly, he stops becoming a slave when they all risk their lives to help Dalinar.
I don't know if I fully understood that as well. I didn't connect those dots.
But, when you lay it out like that, it's like,
nice.
It's not, it's not the most subtle thing. I don't know why I missed it multiple times. Maybe it is subtle. I don't know. Then again, maybe even the most obvious of plot points become subtle when it's, in a book that's 1,200 pages long.
Lots of things to draw.
Yep.
Okay.
Do you want to talk about the epilogue?
Not yet.
Okay.
So I still want to talk a little bit about Kaladin because we haven't really talked about his childhood.
Oh, that's right. Fair enough.
So, some very formative things happened in his childhood.
Go on ahead.
One, his brother, Tien, was always the one person to kind of make Kaladin feel better because
Oh,
I think
yeah.
the depression or kind of the angsty tendencies,
It's
started
not
pretty
phase.
early.
It's seasonal affective disorder. The big sad. The seasonal sad.
When all the high storms went away. Yeah. So Tien was a big thing, and then also Laurel.
Yeah.
So Kaladin's parents actually foresaw potentially marrying Cal and Laurel. Obviously, all those plans went down the drain when Wistio died.
Yep.
And speaking of Wistio's death, the big reveal there is that Lirin did kind of steal the spheres. So
Yeah.
all of the townspeople whispering are
About
actually right.
Yes. But it's...
Or at least they're not wrong.
Yeah. It's... Yeah. I like the dilemma.
I like the dilemma. I like the history and the depth of Lirin's characters. So as a quick note, Lirin was going to be a main character in one of Brandon's other books. So that's why there is such a rich history, because he was kind of a well thought out character first, and then he kind of got put into the story. So there is a reason why this character
There's
is so
a
good.
metatextual reason for why he's so deep.
Yes.
But I will say he is not popular among the fandom.
He's kind of a hard man.
Yeah, he's hard, and sometimes he's a hypocrite, right? Like he insists on these high standards of behavior for Kaladin, but like you said, he was willing to steal, right?
Yeah, so there are nuances to that. I mean,
Yeah.
I do believe Lirin that
I like him as a character.
Yeah.
I like the dilemmas he deals with. I don't know how I feel about him stealing those spheres though.
Well, I do believe Lirin that it says, had Wistio kind of thought of it ahead of time, he would have promised those spheres.
But he didn't.
But he didn't.
Right? And that's why it's so juicy. And but at the same time, he was also using it for the benefit of everybody, right? Because they need to have a surgeon there to save lives. But it wasn't his decision to make. It's a lot.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
But, he's such a badass character. I keep thinking back to the night where the townspeople were going to come in and
Is this
steal.
what you came for?
There was just no hesitation. Swung open the door and
Yeah.
was just started berating them. He's a really badass character, and I kind of love him for that.
Well, you came here to take it. Take it from me. Yeah. No, I get it.
It also kind of kills me that Laurel was also thinking that she could marry Cal as a young girl. She was a planner. She was definitely planning. She was pushing him to go get...
She wanted to change Cal into being someone that she could feel good about marrying.
Yes.
Right.
She wanted him to go win a shard blade so he would become a Light Eyes.
Yes. And then, but not, yeah, and not only that, Light Eyes of high rank, right? So, in this very similar way to how Kaladin was in love with an idealized version of Laurel, I think she was interested. I'm not even going to go as far to say as in love. I think she was interested in a version of Kaladin that never existed.
Yeah.
Right? And that's kids, right?
It is. Yeah. I always think of Laurel liking Kaladin for Cal, but then I always kind of get frustrated with her when she purposely, very, very purposely brings him over to other kids, gets a fight started, and then just abandons Cal completely.
Well, and that has to do with what it means to be a man in this society, right? Mm-hmm. It's you're supposed to be an illiterate brute.
Yeah.
And and that would make him so it's complicated. I
have a hard time digesting Laurel. I just want to briefly mention that Kaladin was trying to get Kaladin was trying to get all the bridge crew to come form up and be a group and be human. Kaladin offered the stew to Gaz.
I didn't notice that. And Gaz is his arch enemy up at that point. Except for all of his other arch enemies.
Yes.
For sure.
So I think that's a shining moment
And
for
Rand.
Cal of just Kaladin.
You can call him Cal. We're
I
friends.
know. Well, the point is that
We spent thousands of pages with him. We're friends now.
but Cal is supposed to be the childhood young Cal, and Kaladin is the adult who wants to be a good person and do things. But I don't think I would have done that. I don't think I would have been a good enough person to offer stew to Gaz had I been in his position. So I think
Yeah, fuck Gaz.
it's a small moment, but I think it's an important moment to just show us where Kaladin's heart is.
I want to briefly talk about the epilogues, and I do mean briefly.
Okay, we'll have to talk about the Chasm Hunt Fiend in another episode.
Yeah. So I think, because there's two things that I really consider to be epilogues. There's Zeth's last chapter and then Wit's chapter.
Yep.
And so for Zeth, Zeth is, we dived in on his interludes in another episode. Go check it out. But he's getting ready to go and assassinate another king, Taravangian, only to discover that, plot twist, good old kindly King Taravangian
Dumb.
Yeah, was secretly the one ordering him to do all of the murder. And his famous hospitals are just a front for him to slowly kill people and hear their dying prophecies.
Called the Death Rattles.
Yes. And so at, where the last main, that last chapter in the book ends is, Taravangian.
The last twist of the knife.
Is Taravangian ordering Zeth to kill Dalinar.
Which really drives home the point even more that Dalinar is a threat.
Yes.
Dalinar is a very big player in the world.
Yes.
And he's not even king.
Yeah.
No one's looking to kill
Elhokar.
Elhokar. They're trying to kill Dalinar.
Well, I think Elhokar was kind of trying to kill him. Anyway, whatever. But that's a whole separate can of worms. And then with the real epilogue at the end, it's
okay if that chapter didn't make any sense.
Yeah, he's supposed to be a bit of an odd one, right? And he's musing to people who are very confused about what things people value in the world, and he concludes that it's timing, right?
It's very depressing to hear him talk sometimes.
Yeah. And so then as he watches as the last herald, Taln, who had been left in damnation since the very first chapter in the book, 5,000 years ago, and he watches Taln stumble into town proclaiming that a new desolation is coming. And I just thought it was I like that scene. I like all of Wit's epilogues when they have.
So, do you think we're supposed to infer that he is being timely, or that he's not being timely?
No, you're way too late, my man. And Wit says that outright. No, you're very late. You are my poor, poor friend.
I don't know if I see him being late, but...
Well, good thing we've got, 9 more books, only 4 of which are published, to really dig into how that all worked out for everybody. Okay.
I think we should take another 5 minutes and wrap up some things, because there are some beats that I want to hit. Back at the beginning of the book, the Chasm Fiend Hunt is kind of an epic first battle scene. We're...
first from Dalinar's point of view, yeah.
Dalinar and all these other people are doing all this crazy stuff with the horses and ramming swords in and talking about, really talking up with these shard blades. And then at the crucial moment, he dismisses the blade.
Yeah.
And he just holds the jaws open. It's pretty epic. That's definitely written for
that scene.
That's definitely written for a cinematic.
There's a lot of fan art out there of that
approach.
Scene.
There was also no mention of Spren.
No, there's definitely, because they talk about Glory Spren
but not during.
They talk about the strange Spren that, surround Chasm Fiends.
When it's dead. After it's dead, but not during the scene. I don't know if that's an oversight on Brendan's part or if it's significant. But I also want to note, as epic as that was, leading up to that, and there was just a lot of talk of 10 heartbeats to summon on a blade. There's a very long kind of list of paragraphs that talk about, 1 heartbeat and Dalinar does this, and a 2nd heartbeat and Dalinar does that, and it just seems to take too long for me. And I'm like, there's no way you did all of that in 10 heartbeats. I don't care what your speed was for a heartbeat.
It's dramatic licensing.
That's way too much.
It's dramatic license. I go for it. Man. I don't know. I really like Shallan and Yasna getting into the ethics of killing in self-defense when she instigated it. I love that discussion. It's completely the opposite.
Wait, what conversation?
When the applied philosophy lesson.
Yeah.
When Shallan breaks down all of the different philosophical frameworks and basically all of them, say that Yasna's in the clear.
Yeah.
I like that. Oh,
the fact that it was moral, or it was moral but not legal, or legal but not moral, or something.
I like the way Shallan works through it, and how for one, I always like people questioning their motives in very academically rigorous ways. I like that. I like seeing people do it, because honestly, I think it's great when you see a character who's open to changing their mind, really try. But I also think it shows her naivete pretty clearly, because she knows it was wrong. She doesn't you don't. She's putting the cart before, she's putting Descartes before the horse.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my God. In that, these ethical frameworks are the way that they work is they start with what you think is right, and then they try to systematic, to explain how you already know what is right and what is wrong. There's something very naive about her approach to it, right? She already knows that she feels that what Yasna did was wrong, right?
Right.
And then she's trying to, basically shop around for a philosophy that supports that, right? I mean, that's not...
Which is why that's Yasna's thing, is that you need to study this now so that
and
when you apply it to your own actions,
right,
and not just seeing it from outside of, and applying it to Yasna's actions.
Like I said, I liked that, and I thought it did a great job in, a lot of ways.
Yeah.
I did not like any scene involving Kaladin the Wretch, right? So there's a big, third of the book where I'm just like, I know,
I settle in. I love this book before that.
I think it's more of a personal problem, right? Because I do struggle with anxiety and sometimes depression. And, sometimes those are just, it's hard to read sometimes.
Yeah.
And so I just, it's not that I think that they're poorly written or anything. It's just I don't like them.
Okay.
Right?
I can see that.
Yeah.
One thing I do want to point out, the betrayal, explaining why Sadeas had to thoroughly destroy Dalinar the way that he did, and not, the multitude of other ways that were available to Sadeas. He really needed to destroy Dalinar, Adolin, and a good chunk of his army, and this was a way that he could do that, because he really needed to, more than decimate, but he needed to, thoroughly destroy Dalinar in order to not start a war.
Yeah.
Because that would have been counter to Sadeas' other plans. So
yeah. So
it is confusing on first read of why
this way?
Why this way? Why this scale?
Yeah. Okay. I think I need to go pick up some kids from daycare.
Yeah. So we need to end.
Yeah. Thanks for podcasting with me, dear.
Thanks for podcasting with me.
And thanks, audience, for audiencing with us. We've been Cosmere Casual. Check us out. YouTube, Instagram, social media, Reddit, Spotify. I don't know, man. Cosmere Casual. Our email address is cosmerecasual@gmail.com. Our intro and outro music is licensed through Tribe of Noise. The artist is Ketsa, and the song is Odyssey.
Yeah, and if your parents hang out at Third Place Books.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Hello. Very lovely parents that you have. And until next time, keep your wits about you.